Morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us this morning, this Martin Luther King Day Junior Eve. And, uh, and I feel like it's so relevant to talk about music, too. If you haven't noticed in the news, there is an inauguration tomorrow. And there has been a lot of discussion about the music and the musicians as well that plan on participating in it. So I do feel like this is timely. And of course, it's my favorite subject to discuss, so thank you for being here with me. Because music has always been an integral place, always had an integral place in the human experience. Like the body of a guitar, our bodies resonate and create glorious sounds from deep rolling bass notes to high soaring soprano and all manner of percussive sounds in between. We take it with us, and arguably we need it to survive. Music and art have long been vehicles for resistance that are capable of evoking emotional and political change, whether that be through the beating of a drum or boldly singing, "Ooh, what's going on?" Or, "I said, hey, what's going on?" Resistance music contextualizes how it sounds to rebel against systems that disparage and slaughter marginalized groups that aren't the personification of societal expectations. But resistance music doesn't only call forth the problem, it can offer solutions and pathways towards healing. Music nurtures a sense of identity and purpose, offering solace amid despair and fostering a collective spirit of defiance. This morning, I invite you to take a very fast journey with me through a very abbreviated history of music that is unabashedly American and the foundation of the protest songs and freedom songs of the latter 20th century up to today. Scholars have cataloged approximately 6,000 American Negro spirituals, which constitutes the largest and most significant form of American folk song. Some tunes fall into the category of work songs, others focused on lyrics describing life in a better world to come. These melodies and stories have been passed down orally from generation to generation in the plantation fields, in churches, in camp meetings, and presently have taken their places on concert hall stages and recital series around the world. Some may wonder why use the classification American Negro Spiritual as opposed to a more updated term or perhaps more contemporary classification like African American spirituals. Dr. Everett McCorvey, founder of the American Spiritual Ensemble and a researcher in this area, comments, "The term American Negro Spiritual speaks to the history, the suffering, the hope, and the resolve of a people who were able to sing through their suffering and tell and retell their heroic stories of triumph and survival through these songs. It is a story and a history that hopefully will never be forgotten. And while the songs were born out of this very dark period in our American history, these songs are now sung, celebrated, and revered all around the world. While some of the language in the music is updated in order to be sung in a more contemporary style and to remove a barrier of dialect, the melodies, the sentiment, and the stories of the spirituals are over 400 years old and need to be sung and need to be remembered. The term spiritual is derived from the King James Bible translation of Ephesians 5:19. Speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. The form has its roots in the informal gatherings of African slaves in praise houses and outdoor meetings called brush arbor meetings or bush meetings or camp meetings. Music making permeated important life events and daily activities. However, the white colonists were alarmed by and frowned upon the slaves' African-infused ways of worship because they considered it to be idolatrous and wild. As a result, the gatherings were often banned and had to be conducted in a secret manner. The enslaved population in the American colonies had been introduced to Christianity in the 17th century, but uptake of the religion was relatively slow at first. But they were fascinated by the biblical stories containing parallels to their own lives and created spirituals that retold narratives about biblical figures like Daniel and Moses. As Africanized Christianity took hold, spirituals served to express the community's new faith, as well as its sorrows and its hopes, and to share information about the Underground Railroad, the freedom movement that helped the enslaved people escape from Southern slavery to the North and to Canada. The song "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" was probably composed in the late 1860s by Wallace Willis and his daughter Minerva, both Choctaw freedmen in Oklahoma. They may have been inspired by the sight of the Red River, which reminded them of the Jordan River. The song uses the theme of death to remind the audience of the glory that awaits in heaven. Specifically, it refers to the Old Testament account of the prophet Elijah's ascent into heaven by chariot with coded lyrics. It's been said that if a slave heard the song, they would know they had to be ready to escape. A band of angels are coming to take them to freedom. The Underground Railroad, the Sweet Chariot, is coming south, swing low, to take the slave to the north or freedom, carry me home. This was said to be one of Harriet Tubman's favorite songs, according to the biography by Sarah Hopkins Bradford's Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. So if we have the words up, can we sing through that one together, please? Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. So if the coded lyrics to the Underground Railroad were not subversive enough, know that in 1939, Nazi Germany's Reich Music Examination Office added this song to a listing of undesired and harmful musical works. So, as you would expect with these beautiful and moving songs, they grew in popularity with white people as well. And there was a published work in 1819 called The Methodist Error, or the second title, Friendly Christian Advice to those Methodists who indulge in extravagant religious emotions and bodily exercises. speaking about all the dangers of Negro spirituals. In the 18th century, spirituals became less about the desire to return to Africa with the succeeding generations born in the American colonies, but that didn't diminish the desire for a literal heaven on earth. Like Follow the Drinking Gourd from Our Story for All Ages, Down by the Riverside provided geographic information for the safe travel of slaves to the north. The reference to the riverside in the song, though originally referring to the River Jordan in the Bible, was also believed to be a coded way to refer to the Ohio River, where slaves could find safe passage north. It has roots dating back to before the American Civil War, but the song has alternatively been known as Ain't Gonna Study War No More, or Going to Pull My War Clothes, among others. It was first recorded by the Fisk University Jubilee Quartet in 1920, and there are at least 14 black gospel recordings before World War II. Because of its pacifistic imagery, Down by the Riverside has also been used as an anti-war protest song, especially during the Vietnam War, and is included in collections of socialist and labor songs. Let's sing that one together now. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. No more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more, no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Thank you. It should be mentioned that the Jubilee Singers I mentioned earlier, a chorus consisting of children of and former slaves from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, sparked an international interest in spirituals. The group's extensive touring schedule in the United States and Europe was well received, but some African Americans at the time associated the spiritual tradition with slavery and were not enthusiastic about continuing it. But the Fisk University Singers' performances persuaded many that it should be continued. Ensembles around the country started to emulate the Jubilee Singers, giving birth to a concert hall tradition of performing the music that has remained strong to this day, and countered the vaudeville-esque misrepresentation of black music. Their existence was resistance too. Music is key to sustaining community and enabling survival, literally. Studies suggest that the frequency of listening to religious music is associated with a decrease in death and anxiety and increases in life satisfaction, self-esteem, and a sense of control. These associations are similar for everyone, men, women, low and high socioeconomic status. The gospel tradition has preserved the lyrics of many spirituals, but the musical forms have changed dramatically as harmonies are added and the tunes arranged to suit new performance styles. Plus, instead of the basics of the voice and body percussion, instruments are added like the piano and the organ. And of course, since it grew up along blues and jazz, you can hear blues and jazz guitar as well to accompany gospel music with ease. Gospel music goes on to be used in the civil rights movement because its power was recognized. Whether the songs are sung in the streets by picketers or in the pews of churches, they are subversive hymns to tear down evil and call in a new day. Many hymns are conceived in the throes of tragedy. Precious Lord was written in Chicago in 1939 following the death of Thomas Dorsey's wife, Nettie, and infant son during childbirth. Known as the father of black gospel music, Dorsey combined African-American church hymns with blues and jazz. This worldly combination was not without controversy at first, but it set the tone for gospel music for decades to come. I know you all know Precious Lord. Sing that one with me. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When the darkness appears and the night draws near, and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Precious Lord was known as Martin Luther King Jr.'s favorite song, and he often invited gospel singer, the one and only Mahalia Jackson, to sing it at civil rights rallies to inspire crowds. And at his request, she sang it at his funeral in April of 1968. King's last words before his assassination was a request for musician Ben Branch to play it at a service he was due to attend that night. His exact last words were, "Ben, make sure you play Take My Hand, Precious Lord in the meeting tonight, and play it real pretty." An opera singer sang it at the state funeral for President LBJ in January 1973, and Aretha Franklin sang it at Mahalia Jackson's funeral in 1972. And the next hymn was written by a man who was moved to speak out against something from which he had once profited. Amazing Grace's lyrics are based on John Newton's experience of receiving God's grace and mercy despite the terrible things he had done. See, prior to John Newton's life as an ordained minister, he participated in the Atlantic slave trade and captained a slave ship, and he later became an abolitionist. The song has been reclaimed within gospel music and is possibly the most sung and most recorded hymn in the world. Author James Basker states that the song has been employed by African Americans as the pragmatic Negro spiritual because it expresses the joy felt at being delivered from slavery and worldly miseries. During the Civil Rights Movement and opposition to the Vietnam War, the song took on a political tone. Mahalia Jackson employed Amazing Grace for civil rights marchers, and she wrote that she used it to give magical protection, a charm to ward off danger, an incantation to the angels of heaven to descend. I was not sure the magic worked outside the church walls in the open air of Mississippi, but I wasn't taking any chances. Will you sing Amazing Grace with me, please? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. And we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. The civil rights movement sparked an outburst of new protest music in America, but I'm continuously amazed at just how many of the songs during those protests came straight from the Christian songbook. We Shall Overcome, This Little Light of Mine, Oh Freedom, and Eye on the Prize, just to name a few, were spirituals originating from slavery that lived on in church organizations. Gospel music was used in the civil rights movement to encourage youth participation, to attract the masses, and instill confidence. Freedom songs, developed eventually, were based on gospel songs and spirituals. Because you see, music can be created by the individual, but its power grows when it is shared in community. This concept of communal effort has shaped some of the most revolutionary soundtracks and movements from the likes of Stevie Wonder, John Coltrane, Marvin Gaye, Josephine Baker, Nina Simone, and others. Consider Stevie Wonder's string of albums in the 70s, which are basically prophetic. You could play them right now and it still relates to the conditions of black people today, or the condition of the world, or things like global warming. He was talking about that in the early to mid-70s. All types of issues that still exist today. Few songs can match the majesty and soulful power of our closing hymn today, We Shall Overcome. So I invite you to stand and open your hymnals to hymn number 1.